Hey everyone, welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for today, September 14th, 2021. Uh, as always, I am Editor-in-Chief Avram Pilch, joined today by Associate Editor Les Pounder, Raspberry Pi expert Ash Hill, and today's very special guest, Brandon Withrow, who has built an amazing project that has taken the Raspberry Pi community by storm, a Simpsons TV set. Thank you so much for joining us, Brandon. What can you tell us about your amazing project?
Yeah, so the TV, I got one right here actually, so I can show you guys. Let's see. Can you guys see that?
Ooh. Yes.
Yeah, so it's a tiny 3D printed TV that's got a Raspberry Pi inside of it with a tiny little screen, working knobs and buttons and stuff, and it basically plays The Simpsons on loop. This one actually is, I just got to put an SD card in it. I designed it with a little, let's see if I can get it up there. It has a little SD card in the back, and basically it'll play any video that is on the SD card, kind of just on an endless loop. I originally designed it just to kind of be a desktop thing for my wife that would make her laugh. And kind of on a whim, I posted it on the 3D printing subreddit, which is a really wonderful subreddit, and it kind of blew up and went everywhere.
That's amazing. So, what type of Raspberry Pi is inside of it?
It has a Pi Zero, the wireless model of the Pi Zero, which is kind of my personal favorite Pi to play with, just because it's so small and versatile. It doesn't have the power that a Pi 4 does, but the nice thing about it is you can power it with just a very small amount of electricity over a USB, and doesn't have all the requirements that a Pi 4 does.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how does it play the videos? Does it do the dials do anything to allow you to change the video?
The dials don't. The dials just turn the screen on and off and adjust the volume. But there have already been, I made a build guide for this, so there's been a lot of people making clones of it and doing upgrades and stuff. And somebody made a Futurama one that's pretty amazing. And they have kind of a long press that changes the channels and stuff like that, which is cool.
It also works with the thing longer, doesn't it?
Yes, it's a very important thing longer.
That's amazing. So how long did it take you to develop this project?
It kind of came together over a weekend, though I must say that a lot of the stuff that I used was kind of reused from other projects. I've been messing around for the past year a lot with using Pi Zeros to do video-driven projects. So kind of like, magic picture frames and those kinds of things. And I've been really into using I was using a really light version of the Debian called Pico OS, which was based off of Jesse, which has been discontinued. So I I had to change to Buster recently. So I've been doing a lot of video stuff around that.
What did you do to get it to I mean, I haven't used one personally yet, so how smooth is the video, and what did you do to get it to play the most smoothly?
The video is pretty smooth. The player is the OMX player, which is a command line video player. It's a great player. It's not as feature rich as like VLC, but if you have H.264 video on a Pi Zero, you can actually, you can do HD footage with it, and it runs pretty. Especially if there's nothing else running on the Pi, it runs pretty good.
So does that mean that it's not running X Windows, or is it just straight to command prompts?
Yeah, straight to command prompt. I do believe that the OMX player has a requisite for X window, or X server anyway. But it's Raspberry Lite, so.
Yeah, that's key. I mean, I had a project I was working on a few years ago. I never really got far like you have, but maybe you have some advice for me, because I'd love to resurrect it.
Yeah.
I don't think he's watching. Our managing editor, Matt Safford, is a huge, I don't know what you call it, Scotlandophile. he loves Scotland, and he loves to watch some live streaming webcams from Scotland, and they're like 10 of them. And so I had this idea that I would kind of build a TV-like thing, like a window to Scotland for him, so to speak,
Oh, cool.
with a dial on it. And then it would just automatically be pulling the streams from these webcams, which are online. Like you can get the feeds to them. And then, you know, as you turn the dial, you would just get a different cam or something, because they're like a beach and like Shetland and like a different place in the Highlands that he loves to watch. But the thing was, when I was trying to do it on Raspberry Pi 0W, I found that it could be kind of laggy. Like particularly if I was doing it at full HD. The lower the resolution, the better it performed. So I'm just kind of, and I actually was using OMX Player as the player for that, because I found it was definitely faster than VLC. So I'm kind of curious, what resolution are the Simpson videos that you're playing?
I actually re-encoded them all to the size of the screen, which is 640 by 480. And I mainly just did that so I could fit as much as I could onto a SD card. Even though they do make, you know, terabyte SD cards now, which is just crazy to me. But
Yep, no question about it. So that's pretty cool. How did you develop the design for the TV? Because I think that is one of the things that's really the most difficult to do, is not just do the technology side of it, where you're trying to figure out how to make some videos play off a card is not crazy hard, but like making the TV look the way that you did is amazing. Did you design the box yourself?
Yeah, I designed the box, and it's custom designed to hold exactly the components that I had. So this specific model of screen and the speaker and, you know, all of that stuff. I can actually, I have several of them on my desk right now, so I can kind of open it up for you guys. It works with these little, there's sort of, you can kind of see here, there's these little snaps. And so it's just a snap case where it snaps closed, so you can kind of open it up. And this is the screen front here. And there's a little inlay that the screen kind of fits perfectly on. And then I use a lot of hot glue to hold things together, just because it's easier. And then, you know, it's kind of in a couple of pieces. There's the front, there's the back. The VCR is separate, and I just glued it on. The antennas are actually just printer filament. I didn't even 3D print them. I just stuck them in there. And then the knobs themselves are separate pieces. I designed the whole thing in Fusion 360, which is by Autodesk, and they have a free version as long as you're not, you know, selling anything and all of that. And it was kind of my first time using Fusion 360. I'm typically I do most of my 3D modeling in Maya, or have for several years now. But I like Fusion 360 because there's a lot of parametric design. You can kind of set constraints. It's kind of like CSS for 3D. You know, you can set constraints, and if things change, you can, you know, quick prototype and stuff like that. So it was pretty easy to design the outside to be style, you know, to a certain art style, but then to cut up the inside to fit these exact components, which was a lot of me like spending time with a caliper, measuring the, you know, these tiny little boards and all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you hot glued the screen to the plastic?
Yeah.
and does that like did that like risk damaging the screen, or?
It was definitely a risk, but it didn't do anything to it. I've always been very surprised at how much abuse Raspberry Pis and these similar components can take. I've definitely, there have been a few times like soldering and desoldering a Raspberry Pi that I thought, man, this thing's toast, and it still started up afterwards.
That is great. What type of printer did you print it with?
I have a Ender 3 Pro. I got it at there's a local electronics store here, and they had a special on it. I've only had it for about a month. I got it for like $150.
Wow.
And I didn't know what the quality was going to be, but I've been wanting to get a 3D printer for a long time, and this was one that wasn't going to break the bank. So I thought, it's definitely a tinkerer's 3D printer. You know, it took me about a weekend to put together and set up, and had to do a couple of upgrades. There's a really, you know, really love the Reddit community for that because
It has a big online community.
Yeah,
That's a good beginner printer for that reason alone.
Support is really support. The reason why the Raspberry Pi is such a big deal is because you have such wonderful support. If you have a question, someone else probably had that question before.
Absolutely.
And the reason why why printers like the Ender are so great is because there's so many people who have had it. Now, I just got a new 3D printer that's similar to this past weekend. That's similar to the Ender. Supposedly prints a little bit better. But we'll use Ender parts, which is called the Elegoo Neptune 2, and I spent a lot of time putting it together this weekend, and I still don't have it working, but I might this afternoon. Who knows? But it's that's definitely the way that the real 3D printer fans work, right? They use the open air printers. They don't use printers like this one I have over here that is really easy to use but has a door. Although if you have a toddler like I do, maybe you'll want the one with the door so they don't stick their hand under the extruder. I'm curious, what filament did you use? Was it PLA or?
Yeah, it's a PLA Plus. The brand is Inland.
Inland, the store brand of Micro Center.
Yeah, Micro Center is where I got the printer. So.
Yeah, we love Micro. I love Micro Center.
I do too.
Because Micro Center, for those of you who happen to live in the United States near one of the 25 Micro Centers that exist, and there are Micro Centers in like 20 different states or something, so not everywhere, right? It's a great place to buy Raspberry Pi stuff because it's the only place I know of where you can get Raspberry Pi stuff at Raspberry Pi boards at MSRP. So, you want a Raspberry Pi Zero, you could go there and buy one for $5.
It's my dream to visit a Micro Center. They're that cool. I've never been to one.
Pretty amazing.
So it is pretty cool. Like after I got my vaccinations, like I had one thing I wanted to do. Okay, I'm gonna go to Micro Center now. Plus, they just have like shelves and shelves of like Adafruit boards and Pimoroni boards and things like that. So
and the people watching is amazing too. There's the one here. My wife likes to go with me just to see who else is there. One day we saw. I'm in Kansas City, by the way. And if this guy's listening, I'd love to talk to him because he was leaving as we were coming in, and he had a hat on that had a computer built around the top of it, and it was on and working. There were batteries strapped to his head.
Man.
I really wanted to ask him what it was doing. Like,
me too. I'll invite him on the show.
Yeah,
that is awesome. No, I haven't seen anybody cool at my Micro Center like that. Usually, when I go into the hobbyist section, no one else is in there. It's all people at Micro Center buying graphics cards.
Oh yeah.
But that is really cool. So, when you built the model, did you have things in Fusion 360 that allowed you to create the snapping? Allowed you to create it so it snaps? Because I would find that would be quite a challenge.
It is. It has been a challenge. Like I said, I've just been doing the 3D printing thing for about a month now. And as far as I know, there are no tools that auto-generate these snaps. For me, it was just a trial and error process. When I first got the printer, I spent like a week just designing very small, quick boxes I could print really quickly and then trying out different snaps. The one that I'm using now is still a little, after you open it and close it a few times, those snaps break off. And I'm still redesigning. A lot of it with 3D printers, it's kind of like wood. It has to, like, the strength is so based on which orientation that you print something in,
Yeah, no question about it. No question about it. You might want to try, because I was just discussing this with our 3D print expert on chat like a few minutes ago, printing, although I hear this is quite a headache, but try printing in a different material like PETG.
Oh, yeah.
Because those are less brittle than PLA. So for something like the snaps, it will stretch more and therefore probably not break as easily when you snap them in and out, which is why I want to try printing in PETG. So filament costs about the same.
I haven't been adventurous enough to try any other filaments because the first thing I tried was PLA Plus, and it's just been working for me so far. And I seen so many clog nightmares on the subreddit.
So I hear. I'm just always impressed when you make something that snaps or screws. Like here I have for my new 3D printer, it's wobbly, but someone had come up with a feet you can buy online, so you could like have a little screw here and it screws in. And I'm like, wow, I don't know how they did this, but whoever did this is awesome that they managed to create a threadable screw made out of filament. So that is just really impressive. So what are some of the other projects that you've worked on? This obviously isn't your first Pi project.
Yeah, in terms of Pi, I've been working with the Raspberry Pi for a couple of years now. I actually got my start in this sort of hacker space with Arduino years and years ago, and I was kind of a diehard Arduino guy. It's weird to say this, but I was intimidated by the Pi, and I liked the simplicity of the Arduino. Then I finally just bit the bullet and got into it. My wife and I converted a van into a camper van that we lived in for about 2 years while we saw the country, and it had a solar setup on it, and I needed the solar setup that I built. There was no way to get like quick stats on like what the charge levels were and how much how much we could anticipate the energy we used was every day. So I got a Raspberry Pi 3 and built a small server, and the charge controller for our solar setup had a RS-232 serial port on it. So that was kind of my first Pi project, was building a kind of a monitor that then had a little LCD screen that we could really quickly just look at and say, oh, cool, if we leave the refrigerator running, we're not going to run out of energy today.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how many Raspberry Pis do you have now?
Oh man, way too many. I have a whole drawer of them. Yeah,
no such thing as too many.
Yeah, running in my house, I probably have, oh man, maybe about a dozen, each of them doing a different thing.
Oh, cool. Active Pis.
Yeah.
It's so common for people to repurpose them. Those are active Pis.
Yeah. A big thing we have is we're big bird watchers. So I have these little bird feeders on all of our windows around the house. And using the Motion OS, I built kind of just a motion camera system, and I 3D printed. Let me see if I can grab one without knocking anything over. These little cameras that kind of snap up on the windows, and there's a little suction cup. Yeah, a little suction cup that goes on the window, and it just kind of hangs. So I got it backwards right now, but it hangs on the window, and if a bird lands on it, it just films the bird, and I have a little server running that just is filled with gigabytes of bird videos that I have no idea what I'm ever going to do with, but it was fun to make.
Wow, that's another snap. That's like another thing that snaps together. That's really cool.
This one actually kind of failed. If you look really closely, I've just taped it.
Right. But the mount snaps, right? You were showing that the mount that mounts. Snaps
so you can kind of see there's this little and then this kind of just has a suction cup and sticks to the window, and it just kind of snaps. And then you can angle it a little. I thought that it would hold, but it just kind of dangles there.
But that's really impressive when you have something that can snap. That's really amazing. So really fantastic work. Where can folks go to learn more about your project? Where's the latest code and build instructions?
Yeah, so they're all on my personal website, which is Withrow, my last name, .io. And that is where the build guide is, and also I kind of have a little project gallery on there that's some of the things that I've built. I'm not that great at updating my website.
Well, listen, when you're busy on the projects, it's hard to spend time on the site, right?
Absolutely.
So speaking of projects, Ash, you have an amazing project that I bet Brandon could modify. I know my son is going to be so into it. A new clock that you're checking out.
Yes, I have with me today this electronic clock kit for the Raspberry Pi Pico created by Waveshare. And it's really, really cool because it's not just a fun kit to play with. It's a really pretty clock, and I think it looks good on its own. But I want to show you guys a little bit about how it works and how it goes together. And I'm working on a review for it, which you can find on howtrue.com. That should go live this week. But for right now, I want to see if I can pop it open for you. No, first let me turn it off. There we go. And I'm going to plug it back in. And you'll notice the time is right where I left it. That's because inside is a PCB that holds the Pico. And on that PCB is an RTC module, which is very useful if you're moving your clock around. You don't want to lose your time. Now, also inside, that PCB is connected to a matrix. It is 7 by 22. I'm sorry, I can't get it to open. You'll have to trust me on this one. It's a 7 by 22 matrix that displays the time, and in addition to that RTC module, there's tons of other components that you can play with. It's got a temperature sensor, it's got a light sensor, it even has a buzzer, which Avram has used before to make some songs. So if you wanted to program an alarm, you could use Avram's guide to make it sing. So that's one thing that it does. Let me get this hooked back up here. In addition to the matrix, there are some labels off to the side. It'll show you the day of the week along the top. It has Celsius versus Fahrenheit, AM or PM. It can display things in military time. But what's cool about it is you can do whatever you want with it. This is something that you can program exactly how you want it to be programmed. Waveshare provides some code for you to get started. Unfortunately, it's only in C. So if you're not familiar with C, there might be a bit of a learning curve. However, someone in the community did make a Python script for it, so you can read more about that on HowTrue once the review goes up. They did put an official link to it on the Waveshare website. But yeah, it's a really neat clock. It's really easy to set up. Your Pico will need headers. It doesn't come with a Pico, but it just pops right in. Everything hooks up. It plugs in with a USB. I've got it hooked up to a wall adapter over here, but it comes with the USB cable that you need. And there's also a battery on it, of course, to keep the RTC module ticking in time. So yeah, that's what I had to show off to you guys. I think it's pretty cool. What do you think? You guys want one?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So that's one where, Brandon, I know you're used to Arduino, but that uses a Pico, which probably could give you sort of a little, it's sort of in between the Arduino and Raspberry Pi universes.
Yeah, the Pico is really cool. I haven't had a chance to get my hands on one to play with yet, but I've been really interested in them. They seem pretty powerful.
Yeah, no question. More so than a regular Arduino. So
there you go. Now you can see the Pico.
Oh wow!
And that battery is really easy to replace. Which I think it's like a 3022. Yeah, CR2032. They're really easy to get a hold of. And
yeah, no question about it. That should be, really, really easy to replace. I'm kind of curious about how well documented the C code is, and what are some of the things you would program with it. Like, what would you change if you were programming it that would make it stand out from just a regular alarm clock?
The demo code is a little tricky to follow right off the bat because the comments are written in Chinese, so you have to kind of translate as you go. And I don't know. I think it's fun. A lot of the code that they have just demo-wise shows you how the buttons work, but they don't necessarily implement all of the sensors. So if you want to play with the temperature sensor or the light module, I'm sorry, there's a photo sensor. I can't get my words together. It has a light sensor. It has a temperature sensor. It has all kinds of fun stuff to play with that isn't necessarily accessible immediately in the demo. So if you want those things to trigger other events, you'll need to, that's going to take a little bit of effort, I think, because it's not very clear. There's not a lot of clear documentation from Waveshare about how exactly to set things up if you're not familiar with C.
Great. So that is something that I think would be really cool to check out. It also doesn't seem like it. I mean, the fact that they made the case and they made the board for you probably makes it worthwhile, but it doesn't sound like it would be impossible for somebody to create something like that themselves either. I mean, you could easily get RTC. You could easily get a real-time clock. I think there are real-time clock add-ons for the Pico. You can easily get something to control an RGB matrix, or So, but the fact that they've made the board in that shape and they put it in the case for you,
it's all together,
makes it nice.
And the price point fluctuates a little bit. I think when we checked it yesterday, it was $32. It's gone up to $36, so it's around $30 ish.
Yep. So very, very cool. I'm gonna have to get one of those for my son one of these days because he has an alarm clock that's it's sort of like that, but a regular alarm clock. If it had a Pico inside, he would be much more excited about it.
Because it's a Pico, and if you can't put a pie in it, why not put a pie in it?
But we would prefer that we could program it in micro or circuit Python. So,
Yeah.
But maybe one of these days. Brendan, what would you do if you were building an alarm clock? Would you want any new special? Would you put any crazy features on it?
Yeah, I mean, my immediate thought is this is a project that exists, but a friend bought this for he was kind of a big brother to a kid that moved away, and he got this. It was this toy that you could like send a message to, and it would display the message. So it'd be cool to kind of hook that into I don't know, like a Twitter account or something where you could kind of tweet a message to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you would need to attach Wi-Fi to it or Ethernet. But yeah, depending on which pins are left available, that actually WaveShare should build that into the board, right? Because we definitely can do Wi-Fi with the Pico. You just have to get one of a few different add-on boards. So
I would like to communicate with it because one idea I had was to create a calendar on a matrix and have it communicate with the clock so that whenever certain things happen, the matrix separately would do something.
Right.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, also, right, then if you could link it to your Google Calendar or something like that, then it could also, right, it could also be useful that way. So being connected, I think, is definitely something a person would want out of that.
Definitely.
Speaking of being connected, Les, you have a couple of new boards that you've been playing with. I think they offer some new ways to get connected also.
They do indeed. There are two very different boards. And I mean very different, but also very similar. They're both small. So I'm going to go to some photographs. Because they're so small, my overhead camera can't pick them up with clarity. So right now in front of you, you can see the RP2040 stamp. So this stamp is literally like the size of a postage stamp. It is tiny, but it breaks out the full RP2040 system on chip. And it's a great idea. It's produced by Arturo 182. It's a solder party. And I got sent one of these to play around with as a preview. It comes with a carrier board, which shares the Arduino Uno Leonardo form factor, so you can see the pins around the perimeter of the board. You've got to solder it yourself, but it's not a big job, unless you make a mistake like I did. Hey-ho, we all make mistakes. I fixed it, though. The board breaks out a selection of GPIO pins, not all of them, but we've got battery charging, that's on the bottom right. For LiPo batteries. Top left, we have got a stemmer QT or a quick connection. USB-C input for power and data. And we've got a DC jack on the side to provide power, should we wish. And here's a size comparison. On the left is a stamp, on the right is a standard Pico. And just to give you a rough idea, the squares you can see, the grid, are 1 centimeter squared. It is a tiny little board. It is great though. I'm just going to show you the next one. The next competitor will be the PGA 2040 from Pimoroni. Again, it's slightly smaller and it breaks out all of the pins that are present on the RP2040. But I feel the stamp just has it. I don't mind about the extra 3 mil I've got in size on it. That's fine. I've got a nice board I can get access to. The PGA is fun to play with, but breaking out those connections is a little difficult. The next board I've got is the one on the top there, the little black board. It's a Seed Zhao RP2040. And this is a very similar board to Adafruit's Qt Py 2040. In fact, they share the same pinout. They even run CircuitPython, MicroPython, Arduino, C, that sort of thing. But the difference between the two, well, there's two differences. One, the price. It's $5.40 versus Adafruit's board, which is $10. Why is there a difference in price? Well, if you look at the Seed board, there's no stemmer QT connection, which is present on the Qt Py board from Adafruit. So if you don't need stemmer QT, save $5, and you can get yourself one of these, and you can do exactly the same work.
Nice.
So I'm going to show you what I've been doing with them. So just a quick project with the Arduino Xiao there. There it is, just flashing an LED. I was messing around with that. I had a few problems with the pin definitions. The physical pin layer on here, you'd think it goes 0, 1, 2, 3 down one column. Let's get it in shot, always helps. There we go. But for some reason, 0 is down here, and that's how MicroPython sees the pins. It's a little weird. And I've just put next to it a QtPy 2040 just for a size reference. It's tiny. Lovely little board. But I wanted to mess around with the stamp board because I think it's rather interesting, especially with the Arduino carrier board. So I've done my standard test, which is make blinky things blink. So LED there, simple blink. Here's more elaborate blink. This is an emergency power off switch from a factory. So someone's got caught in machinery or the building's going to explode or something. They press this button to stop things happening. And I rigged it up to the stamp to make these neopixels. These edge lit neopixels, which look like neon. Do crazy colors. So if I press this down now,
Woo.
you can see the edge light. It just goes through a rainbow sequence pretty much. This is just a default Adafruit code. The board, the stamp, is running CircuitPython 6. Now, CircuitPython 7 has just gone to release candidate 1, so it's going to be coming out as a proper release very soon. But version 6 for now, absolutely fine, and it will support version 7 when it comes out. So, $5 for Arduino Xiao. This one, the stamp, don't know price yet. This is an alpha board, very early on. But we'll find out when it's released, and there's going to be a review on this on Tom's Hardware.
So I have a question for you. Where did you get the emergency shut-off switch, and is there now someone who's going to lose a hand because of it?
Luckily, I purchased it. I didn't steal it from a factory. But no, I had a run a few years ago where I just go to AliExpress and just buy weird switches. And I have a very large collection in those boxes behind me of switches and buttons. It's great.
Yeah, I always appreciate a non-standard looking button. It's really cool. You always need a nice big button.
Yeah.
So very, very cool. So really great collection of stuff. I want to thank everybody for watching and listening. As always, we are here at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. UK time on Tuesdays live, and you can catch us anytime on YouTube or Facebook. Thank you so much to Brandon for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we will see everybody next week. Bye, everyone.